Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and today we're going to be discussing notes 5 and 10 of the Morgan Scourge event. For those with the rosters available, this seems to be 90% of the pain points of doing these runs, in large part because there is a significant amount of RNG involved when it comes to the use of web warriors. I know that this is frustrating for others, including myself, so I want to start by going over the Scourges that I can personally recommend, because it's really important to frame these in terms of notes 5 and 10, and whether or not you'll be able to clear those with them for those of you who are using Scourges. I also have some gameplay recordings of my own run I did earlier today, beating my recent old score, so I want to share this as well, some of my frustrations here and how I ended up getting through it. I also would like to stress that while Dark Hunters is not necessary to clear some of the lower difficulties, it is incredibly helpful to have them at a decent level to help you through Node 10, and especially for those of you who are trying to be more competitive in this event. So before we get started, I'll also go over my roster, but I don't want people to think that you need what I have in order to clear the Scourge event. I just prepared the best that I could prior, so without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Okay, so we're going to start here in my Web Warrior roster. So, as you can see, they're pretty bulky. I got pretty lucky with regards to Scarlet Spider and Spider-Punk. I got some decent orb pulls in the past. So I do have 5 yellow, 5 red, and everything. I do want to say that just starting off, Spider-Punk is just a load of garbage. Just what he does outside of raids is pretty trash. So despite having 150k Spider-Punk, I actually don't feel that he was really that great, and you could actually substitute him with Dr. Voodoo if you have him leveled up at all, because I actually didn't find Spider-Punk, other than obviously he's got a few things. You know, this is probably the most important thing actually to Spider-Punk, is that when they dodge, they get offense up, and that's just about it. I would completely ignore everything else. Most things don't matter. His damage is really low, and actually I utilize his basic more than anything because he does do 500% on that. The numbers on his special is very poor outside of raids, and it's just not worth using. So Spider-Punk gets an F for me, but realistically, one of the best characters in this Scourge event is going to be Ghost Spider. Her damage stat is super high, because she's the only one who actually gets the damage buff from her passive outside of raids. So in raids, the web warriors get it, but outside of raids, she gets it alone. She also has the retaliation, so the majority of the damage is actually going to be coming from Ghost Spider. So if you had to decide where to put your resources, make sure you put as much as you can into Ghost Spider. And secondly, actually, for me, it would be, I found Miles surprisingly very useful, and he was probably my second best character, not just because he's my second highest power, but I found him to be the second best. As far as my ISOs go, lucky for me, I didn't really need to change much. This is my normal setup for raids, but for those of you who are struggling a little bit, I have heard that, you know, putting on more healers helps. Hell, I've heard that even fortifiers can help, because part of the problem is that when they take damage, they take a fair bit. And so if you do a fortifier, interestingly, if you have the ions for it, you do get minor defense up. And so that might actually keep them alive a little bit longer, but I haven't personally done that, so I'm not sure if I can recommend it. But if anyone else has down below, let me know. And then as for Dark Hunters, boy, yeah, that's the right team. I was thinking Darkhold. Yeah, so Dark Hunters. The biggest thing is where they're going to help you on Node 10. And we're going to go over that footage here. Specifically, it's going to be about Morbius and Ghost Rider doing bleed damage on their specials. So Morbius is Vampiric Spread. It does 3 bleeds with the T4s to primary and secondary targets, which is a lot of damage, actually, especially if you haven't built. And then Ghost Rider's special, Hell Cycle, if you also have the T4s, it's going to apply extra bleeds to the primary target. So we'll see when we get to Node 10 where that's actually really helpful. And Dr. Voodoo is mostly a kit character, but if you can raise him a little bit, the special is really good for Node 10 as well, doing a little bit of extra damage, applying ability block, defense down, and then mind controlling to get them to hit each other. So super helpful here. I think this is what kind of helped me score as well as I did in difficulty 8, and that's what I want to talk about before we look at the gameplay footage. You know, some people saying, well, Boilon, what kind of credentials do you have to tell me anything about Scourge? Well, I mean, I recently cleared a level yesterday, and I'm at 1.487 million points at 282. Now, obviously, I think this is pretty good for me, actually. I've been finding this quite fun, strangely, and I'll be trying to do a little bit better. So yeah, I have been doing pretty decently. And so one of the things I personally recommend here is taking Scourges, especially if we're talking about nodes 5 and 10. If you can't clear nodes 5 and 10, you're not going to get through the run. And so don't put on Scourges that unfairly challenge you for those nodes. And there's a few that I honestly would personally just recommend against. And that's actually the max health ones. You get very little points for this, and I personally would not do it. The more max health you stack on, the harder it is to kill them, obviously. But because you have so few characters to choose from already, you just have Web Warriors and Dark Hunters, or for some people it's just Web Warriors. You don't really want to add this on. Whether it's plus 10, plus 20, or even the plus 30 for 15 points, personally I would not do any of them at all, and you'll find why it's significantly easier, you know, just to not do them. So if this has been a challenge for you and you've been doing that, that could be why. As for other ones that I would either use or not use, this one doesn't actually make a big difference, the gain stealth, because Miles actually gets stealth on spawn, and so this only impacts him if he uses a special. You don't actually need to use a special a lot, so you could completely ignore using this, but it's only worth 1 point, so it's really up to you. As far as other ones that you can use, you know, that doesn't impact nodes 5 or 10, quality minions, this is something that I've used personally. On ally death, this is more for because you don't want people to die in general, so you could add this on as well. Doesn't make a significant amount of difference. And then from there, I mean, it really depends on how many you want to stack on. I mean, I'll probably share my best run at a later time in terms of what I've been able to do, and this is going to vary from person to person, but specifically ones that will impact node 5 and 10. I use this one here. When an enemy is healed, they gain deflect, but one thing that does make a difference for node 10, I do it, but this may not work for everyone, is the unkillable Scourge. When an enemy drops below 50%, they gain death proof. We're going to see when I go through the gameplay footage why this actually kind of impacts. I still made it through this, but for some others, this could be a bit of an issue because, well, you can't bleed out to death when you have death proof, so that becomes a little bit of a problem on node 10, specifically when you're trying to kill magic. But there's a lot that you actually don't really, it doesn't really impact the Web Warriors. My personal preference would be just to stay away from any of the max health ones, because it means that it's going to be a lot harder and a lot longer to kill the characters, which normally under normal circumstances wouldn't be a big deal, but their sustain is not good, so carrying on the fight for too long is a bit of a problem. So yeah, I mean, just be careful about these ones, the max health ones specifically. So I want to jump on over to node 5, and so I have, if I can pull it over here, node 5, if it will play. There we go. So this is node 5. This is with my Web Warriors. And this is actually difficulty 7, not the difficulty 8 that I've been normally running. Now, the reason for this is mainly because I recently, like I said, did a difficulty 8 run, and I didn't really want to... I didn't have the footage for node 5, and so I kind of just grinded my way back up to node 5 on difficulty 7, just to share with you guys where the major pain points are here. And most of you probably have seen it already. And so really, it's when you start the matchup here, it's T'Challa. Right, and so difficulty 7, you'll notice that they don't one-shot my characters. In difficulty 8, this does a lot more damage. But here, you know, anytime you get hit, back out. You basically, it's an RNG fiesta. And it's super frustrating. So, you're basically just resetting over and over again until Star-Lord T'Challa misses. But it also depends on who's dodging, because whoever dodges is actually going to go first. So this does change the turn order of your characters, and that might vary a little bit. The most ideal situation actually would be for OG SpiderMan, in my opinion, to dodge, because then he'll get to go. And why that's important, if I can find a placement here. So why that's important is because if you can use OG's special on Red Guardian and chain all the way around to all 6 of them, that will actually take off Bishop's taunt. Other thing that you can do, though, is also you can have Miles get the... Actually, no, not Miles. Well, no, Miles isn't going to get the dodge. But Miles could take his turn, and you want to get a disrupt with Miles on Bishop for 1. You could do that, and then Strife secondly. And we're gonna forward up a little bit when I actually did get a decent run here, when I got it to where I wanted it to be, and I think it was a little bit up here, maybe. And so I dodged, Scarlet Spider dodge. Okay, and then I did the basic. because the special actually doesn't do a lot of damage, especially outside of raids. And that was okay. And so we got the ultimate. We dodged 1 out of 2 of the attacks. So what I would personally recommend here when Bishop leads up with his ultimate, if you don't dodge all of the hits, and especially if he hits like more than 1, I would back out. And unfortunately, that's where the RNG comes into play. Dodging Star-Lord T'Challa and dodging as many hits from Bishop in that starting run as you can, because it's damage that you don't want to take. And so from here, I think I do the Spider-Punk special because, like, it's just garbage. I don't like Spider-Punk, but just kind of having them there is kind of important. And then you want to make sure that you can land for them. If you're running in higher difficulties, you want to make sure that you're landing that Disrupt on Strife, because if he taunts, then that means you're stuck against him, and that's a bit of a problem. You can see that my characters are really strong when it comes to difficulty 7. My Miles ult is actually able to kill Kitty Pryde, and that's not something that I can do in difficulty 8. So depending on how high your characters are, your web warriors, you know, mileage is obviously going to vary. So whether or not your strength is good enough to kick the crap out of them that easily or not, that's going to be entirely up to you. I still, even though despite me being able to do that, I personally still wouldn't recommend the hit point surges, because I just think it's going to cause undue pain. And you want to end this match as early as you possibly can. So you want to focus on getting Dagger down, because if Dagger gets around to her ult, it sucks. It's basically a GG. And Cloak is another problem here that you want to make sure that you pay attention to as well. So if Cloak gets his ult off, then he's going to get a lot of debuffs on your characters, and that's not very good as well. Star-Lord T'Challa's special becomes a bit of a problem when it comes to difficulty 8. It's not that big of a problem, in my opinion, in difficulty 7. It does suck to get your abilities drained, but normally there's enough time here for you to be able to build that back up with your basics or whatever to get your way through that. But Cloak is definitely the one that needs to die first. After that, that's probably it. So Star-Lord T'Challa, make sure you dodge that ult to start. Bishop, try to dodge as much as you can from him on his ult and his damage, and then make sure that you get Dagger and Kitty Pryde down. Sometimes you'll have the issue where Kitty Pryde is going to land her ultimate, and she'll place Disrupt on your characters. Ideally, that's not great either, so if you can somehow manage to kill Kitty Pryde with some AoE, depending on the strength of your characters before she manages to do that, you can also possibly push through that, depending on how powerful your characters are. When it comes to difficulty 8, though, it's a whole nother ball game, because everything I just said just got ramped up a lot more, and so you have to reset if you take too much damage, because that's really what it's about. It's about not taking that much damage and making sure that you have the cooldowns available for you when you end this level, so that you have it ready for difficulty 10. And so when we look at the difficulty 10, I'm going to bring that up now. This is actually Node 10, which is difficulty 8 that I ran, because that was the good footage that I did end up getting. And so I start off with Dark Hunters for this, and this has some RNG, and I'll kind of share with you why that is. And it's really and this is with my 100 Scourge points, by the way. This is all the ones that I stacked up. And so the RNG here is basically Proxima Midnight's Star Throw. And so you want to leave that middle spot empty so that it doesn't ricochet to certain areas. The most ideal situation is Elsa getting hit. It ricochets to Dr. Voodoo, and then it stops there. You don't want all 4 of your characters. It's okay if Elsa gets hit by that, because she's going to get offense up from her ultimate anyways, but you don't want Ghost Rider and Morbius to get hit by that if you're using them to do a little bit of damage. And it's going to be really important here, because they're going to add damage for me to be able to bring my Web Warriors back in to clear this. So you can see here, I want to focus on magic. So yeah, I reset this a bunch of times. It's super annoying. This is kind of like the Web Warriors on Node 5 until you get exactly where you want to be. You know, I do this for a little while and it sucks. So we're going to try and find the part where I actually make it through here, because I just kind of recorded everything. Not that one either. It does get there. It does get there. It's here. It must be here. Nope, not there either. I should have just edited it out, but must be the one here. No. Oh my god, how long did this actually take? So you can see that this is the most frustrating part of the nodes, because there we go. There we go. Okay, so that doesn't matter. What Thanos did doesn't matter. So the offense down only landed on Elsa and Dr. Voodoo, and that's really important. So you can see when I go into my Morbius special here, I'm going to target Magic, because I want to do as much damage to Magic as I possibly can. I think one of his bleeds got resisted. I do run a Raider on Morbius, and the reason for that is I wanted him to crit, so that when he crits, his bleed actually does more damage, because it's based on the damage that you did. And it did not work, unfortunately, on Magic, but I think I still made it through this anyways. And so I did that, the special, the health cycle. There's like 4 bleeds-ish on Magic. There would have been 5. I do the Dr. Voodoo special. Now, this is really important to make, if you're using these characters, to make sure that you're landing the ability block and the defense down. She does have some pretty decent resistance because you're fighting like 200k characters, and Dr. Voodoo has offense down. So this may require a bunch of resets at this stage. I think I got lucky. I got both of them on there, and she took a pretty big chunk of damage. And actually, what's interesting is she didn't go under 50%, which is ideal, because now I can bap her with Elsa. So do a little bit more damage, but you're going to see where that death-proof Scourge comes into play. So I have that Scourge unkillable. So potentially, if that hadn't been there, that would have been enough to kill Magic. Or she would have bled out, one of the two. Fortunately, all of the characters that have bleeds are not going to bleed out because they have death-proof. And so that was an extra 10 Scourge points that I wanted to add on, but it didn't actually make or break this run. We still managed to get through this, enough to basically wither them down enough for me to bring back in my Web Warriors and be able to clear that. And that was probably what was the most important thing. And so we're going to jump ahead a little bit here, you know, and basically to where we end the fight, because I don't really do too much after that. And that's what they were kind of there for. They were there to kind of eat the cooldowns. As you can see, I'm eating the Cyclops ult, I'm eating all the taunts, you know, all of these really important cooldowns. She did end up bleeding out. I don't know how. Maybe did I bap her in the face maybe with Ghost Rider, and then maybe I knocked the death proof off. I'm not sure. But that was, if you can get Magic dead by the end of this, super clutch, super important, and I think that's one of the best situations that you can be in when you end this. And so I want to bring in my last video, and that's the Web Warrior part where I come in for the cleanup. And so at this stage, I'm just cleaning up, but I want to make sure that I'm kind of killing the characters that are most important. You can see that I didn't come in. This is not from the previous video from Node 5. I actually ended Node 5 with lower hit points than I'd like. So I am being a bit more particular here with my dodging and all that. And so the best thing here is using OG's special here on the side. I'm hitting basically everyone with the debuffs. Super important, other than Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw is someone that I want to get down, though. But I'm doing the Miles ult for maximum damage here. Also, Cyclops is a little bit of a concern. However, Ebony Maw is just... I want him dead anyways at some point. Also, Proxima. Corvus Glaive drops on in the next wave, so I didn't want that extra damage potential with Corvus Glaive and Proxima being on the field at the same time. So I get him dead. And then at that point, the second wave is going to drop down. And I wait to do any more AoE. I still have Spider-Punk's AoE here that you can see. But I kind of hold it a bit. Now, I should have probably gone for the kill on Ebony Maw, because now that's... Actually, sorry, no, I did that because... Yeah, that's right. Colossus had Disrupt, so that way he couldn't taunt anyway, so that's good, actually. And from here, I basically just have to survive. I do the ability block from Ghost Spider on Phoenix, and that stops her from using her special. And that's really important. But you have to be concerned about Psylocke. Oh, sorry, maybe I stun her, and then... Oh, who do I stun? I should have checked this beforehand. I stunned Phoenix, and then I ability block, probably, Psylocke. You want to be really careful about Psylocke, because she's obviously going to chuck back her negative status effects. And that's really important. So from here, the Ghost Spider special... And, you know, 4 to 10, right? So you don't actually need a lot of hit points if you line it up properly with Dark Hunters. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a video footage of, especially difficulty 8, and you can see that Miles just bit it, but I don't really need him. This comes down to the wire, because I didn't have a lot of hit points coming into this. I think it's a bit of a struggle to use Web Warriors on both nodes, both 5 and 10. At difficulty 8, for sure. I think it's almost near impossible, unless you want to smash your head about 100 times by resetting the nodes. At lower difficulties, it's probably possible, but I haven't actually done that, because I don't need to. I might try it sometime for footage, perhaps. But I think that I definitely do not regret having Dark Hunters leveled up. I know it was extra Mystic gear, but I think it's what's probably propelled me a little bit further on my ranking, and I think it definitely helped me. Now, whether or not you feel it's worth it, you know, at this stage, I wouldn't. If you haven't already leveled them, I probably at this stage wouldn't bother, because I think it's a bit of a waste now. But, you know, I did build this ahead of time, and so I'm glad I did, because I don't know if I would have been able to do as much as I am doing now without them. So you can see it was really down to the wire to the last 2 characters. So there we are. This is difficulty 8 with 100 Scourge points. I cleared this. Got a new high score. I hope that some of this was helpful. I know that this is the biggest challenge for people. And really, if you don't have your web warriors built up to a good enough degree, the only thing I can say is that you're going to have to reset a lot. And you're going to get frustrated. And you're either going to gear them up a little bit higher so you get less frustrated, or you're going to have to spend hours resetting your node to get the optimal run. Because at the end of the day, you really have to be concerned about your dodge rates, really, and making sure you're not taking too much damage. So that's the end of this video, guys. I'll be doing another Scourge run, actually, at noon Pacific time on Discord, sorry, on Twitch. So if you want to come hang out and see me get better than my current points, then come check me out there. Otherwise, until next video, guys, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you when you see you. So I screwed that up, but it's okay. I do that sometimes. So Boilon signing out. Stay safe and healthy. That's it.